Beorn, Bears, Brawl. Today we're taking a look at Beorn the Fierce, as voted on by my supporters on Patreon, in this monogreen bear Brawl deck. So our commander's a 5 mana, 6/6 with Trample, giving other bears we control +2/+2, and we can generate additional bears at the beginning of combat on our turn. We get to put a Trample counter on up to one target creature we control, which also then becomes a bear in addition to its other types, so it will get that +2/+2 bonus. And if we then control 3 or more bears, we also get to draw 2 cards. So all it really takes is one additional bear on the battlefield. So then if we play Beorn, we go up to 2. With the ability, we go up to 3. So we get to immediately draw 2 cards. So the deck doesn't need to have a huge amount of bears to get the most out of Beorn, but having a few here and there will make the ability more impactful the turn we deploy our commander. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting of course with a lot of mana acceleration. We want a lot of early ramp, so we can get to 5 mana as soon as possible. A lot of our ramp cards are also mana creatures, which we can still target with Beorn's ability to eventually give them +2/+2 and get in for a bit of damage. And then we've got our bears, which include some cheaper creatures like Ayula, which can also later help us fight opposing creatures, but also a couple changelings like the Chomping Changeling, which can blow up artifacts and enchantments, and then some more expensive bears as the curve goes up, even have some lands that can turn into bears or make additional bear tokens. And then Dancing from Dark to Dawn is another highlight from the Hobbit, which can generate bear tokens with landfall, and as we cast more creature spells, we can also pick up additional +1/+1 counters. So this is definitely the section that diverges the most from other green ramp strategies, but a lot of these cards are still pretty powerful in their own right. Then we've got a bit of additional card advantage. In case our commander gets removed, we can still draw extra cards by casting creatures with Guardian Project or the Great Henge. And then both the Rishkar's Expertise and Season of Gathering can also reward us for controlling a large creature, as we get to draw equal to the greatest power among creatures we control. Then we also have a few additional removal effects, since our deck, while making big creatures is great, does not necessarily have a lot of built-in interaction, so we have a few fight effects to deal with opposing creatures. And then our miscellaneous section has a couple cards to help out against counter spells with Frenzied Baloth or Green Suns to search it up. Lightning Greaves to give Beorn haste can also be very useful, and Uruboroid also has great synergy, as we can turn Uruboroid into a bear, so then it can also massively pump up our team, and Unnatural Growth can also do the same. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with mana acceleration. At 1 mana, we've got the usual suspects: Birds of Paradise, Halfling, Elvish Mystic, Lenor Elves. Utopia Sprawl is great in a deck with a lot of forests. And then I also like Exploration here, since we do have a couple Cultivate effects, which can search up extra forests, so we usually don't run out until later in the game. Then we also have Bantermole Cub, banned in Standard, legal in Brawl to make extra mana, especially with other mana creatures on the battlefield, like the Fanatic of Veronas, which is great if we get a 4-powered creature on the battlefield, which is not going to be an issue. Multiple sorceries that can put extra lands in play. Explorer lets us draw as well. There's a Glimpse getting a forest, Into the North getting a snow-covered forest, since we do have an incentive to run snow-covered basics for Blizzard Brawl. We also have the classic Rampant Growth and the more recent Shared Roots. And then a few more creatures here. Carroted, kind of a weaker version of Fanatic of Veronas, but still pretty good. There's Lotus Cobra, a landfall payoff, also part of why we have a couple fetch lands in the mana base, but then there's also the 5 mana enchantment that makes bear tokens with landfall. Priest of Titania gets better the more elves on the battlefield. We also have Sanctum Weaver in case we have a few enchantments in play, so it can tap for more than 1 mana. And then Rofellos, of course, broken as a commander, but still very good in the 99 when we have 24 forests and more ways to search them up. And then Arcane Signet can immediately make a green, whereas Medallion will discount our green spells by 1, so it makes it easier to double spell. Then we have multiple Cultivate variants, of course the classic, just getting 2 forests in this case, 1 in play, 1 in hand. And then Nissa's Pilgrimage could be even better if we enable Spell Mastery first, which won't happen very often, but it's still just a strictly better Cultivate in this deck. And then we also have Flare of Cultivation, which can occasionally sacrifice a creature to cast it for free. Then we also have some additional landfall payoffs with Nissa making mana similar to Lotus Cobra. Can also find extra elves, no elementals in this deck last I checked. And then Tireless Provisioner making treasures usually, but can also make food tokens with landfall. And then we're also running the new Necklace, which can make a green, and then whenever we cast a green spell and whenever a forest enters, we can put a +1 counter on target creature we control. So I expect this to see a lot of play in various green decks going forward. Then there's Selvala, which also rewards us for playing large creatures, can make a ton of extra mana. The Feardog Core, also technically a bear, so I could also put it in the bear section, as it is also a changeling. And then I.S.T.I.L., another reason to run a couple fetch lands, so we can replay lands out of the graveyard repeatedly. Nissa, another payoff for running a lot of forests. And then Primeval Titan, banned in Commander, but illegal in Brawl, can also search up some of our utility lands when it enters or attacks. And then our bears have a couple lands that can generate bear tokens, with Argoth paying 4 mana. There's Mutavault, which is a changeling if we activate it, so it can also give us an extra bear if we need to. And then the first year is a 1 mana bear that can ramp in growth for 2 mana afterwards. Ayula can give us extra +1 counters on our bears or help them fight opposing creatures. Changeling to destroy artifacts and enchantments. The Mutable Explorer makes a Mutavault token. Then there's a Scavenger 4/4 Death Touch, also plays well with Trample, and then can use the Bind to Life to maybe put something exciting into play. We mentioned the Feardog Core. A Goreclaw can discount our more powerful creatures by 2, including our commander. Then there's the Spirit of Aldergard, another payoff for having snow-covered forests in the mana base. The Earth King makes a bear token, can find extra lands when those 4-powered creatures attack. Then Dancing from Dark to Dawn, one of the more exciting additions from The Hobbit. We've got Surek and Goreclaw, which can give our creatures haste when they enter the battlefield. We've got Titania's Command, making a pair of bear tokens and often searching up 2 non-basic lands even. And then the gigantic Big Bear, 10/7 with Hexproof and Haste, cannot be countered. And of course with Beorn in play, we can also give it Trample. Then Card Advantage starts with Sylvan Library. Very good with any of our shuffle effects, like our fetch lands or cultivate variants, so we can maybe shuffle away any unwanted cards if we don't want to pay 8 life to it. There's the Guardian Project and the Great Henge, rewarding us for playing our creatures out. Oracle of Moldaya can play lands off the top and let us play an extra land each turn as well, so it's also kind of a ramp card. And then Rishkar's Expertise and Season of Gathering reward us for controlling a high-powered creature. Season of Gathering has additional utility where it can maybe blow up artifacts and enchantments as well. Then our additional removal includes Blizzard Brawl, which is also very fitting here. There's the Archdruid's Charm with a lot of different modes, can also deal with artifacts and enchantments, or help us deal damage to opposing creatures. There's Kogla to fight stuff when it enters and destroy artifacts or enchantments when it attacks. Thorn Mammoth can also repeatedly fight opposing creatures. And then Summon Bahamut gives us another powerful Curve Topper that can destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent on the first 2 chapters, so it can also give us a versatile removal spell. And then our miscellaneous section has the Frenzied Baloth to help out against counter spells. There's a Lightning Greaves for Haste and Shroud. The Shroud will prevent you from targeting your own creature with Beorn's ability, so keep that in mind. Then there's Uroboroid to massively pump up our creatures after we turn it into a bear. Unnatural Growth can double all our creatures' power and toughness at the beginning of each combat. And Green Sun Zenith can get whatever green creature we want and put it straight onto the battlefield. I did not include Craterhoof Behemoth in this build, just to change up the win conditions a bit, and we already have Trample from Beorn, so it's not as essential as it would be in other strategies. And then the mana base has a couple utility lands that we can maybe grab with Primeval Titan, Boseiju, another answer to artifacts and enchantments. The castle can maybe help us cast our more expensive creatures or help pay for the commander tax in part. Then plenty of snow-covered forests, Cavern to make our bears uncounterable, plenty of fetch lands to enable landfall several times on some of our cards. Library can also be very nice in your opening hand to draw extra cards. There's Nykthos, which can also give us a nice mana boost equal to our devotion to green. And then Yavimaya can make it so we maybe keep our fetch lands uncracked until we need to enable landfall. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Thranduil, so a elf landfall deck. So not a matchup where I expect to need the Baloth. I don't expect too many counter spells. We're pretty far from casting Summon Bahamut, so I think we can do better. And this is better. The first year pairs very well with Flare of Cultivation as well, although it is also a bear, so it is the type of card we might want to keep around for Beorn. Next turn we can essentially play the Utopia Sprawl for free, and then still Rampant Growth. Opponent with a Shared Roots. And then we've got plenty of forests for Nissa as well. Can save the fetch for Dancing from Dark to Dawn. Yeah, I mean, casting the Flare is reasonable, although I can cast Beorn next turn regardless. So I think we keep it in hand for now. And now 4 mana. And there's Thranduil. Exploration could be useful. Could get Nissa in play, and then next turn potentially double spell. That might actually be better. Could even play Nissa, untap the land with Utopia Sprawl, and still cast a Flare without sacrificing anything. Does expose the enchanted land to removal, perhaps. Could also cast the Exploration first, and then play Verdant, sacrifice it, and then Flare. But then I'm maybe giving up too many landfall triggers that we could use with Dancing from Dark to Dawn. So we're in a pretty great spot, but we'll see what Thranduil can come up with. Can make elf tokens with landfall. They have the new Elven Passage, which is great in any landfall deck, especially if you're running a bunch of elves. Those elves also get +1/+1. And Embrace the Paradox can put another land in play. But now we should get to untap with plenty of mana. And a Green Suns could also come in handy. So, make a bunch of mana, play Dancing from Dark to Dawn, then play a fetch, Exploration, make more bears, play Beorn after fetching. Still haven't activated Nissa yet, and then I can pump up probably the first year, since we'll be able to give it Trample or the Forests, since we can turn that into a bear as well. So give it Trample, Nissa pluses. I don't think I'm casting the Green Suns right now. And then target the Forests. So that now has Trample, I got to draw. And probably fine trading Forest for an Elf, if it means we get in for more damage. Sure. Well, that was pretty much the ideal turn. Opponent can still maybe catch back up if they have something like a River's Rebuke or Cyclonic Rift. Is there anything I can Green Suns for that would stop that? Not that I can think of. Would have 5 mana, so X equals 4. There might be a cool bear we can find. Alternatively, I still replay the fetch, makes more bear tokens. That's also an option. I guess Ayula could have helped us fight. So that could have been a bunch of removal at once. Let's go I still. And then I can replay the fetch once again. Wait on sacrificing. So we can make another bear at instant speed. Opponent starts with a Provisioner. And now Patchwork Banner, naming Elf. But yeah, it looks like the bears are gonna come out on top. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Jennifer Walters, so cannot cast spells in the opponent's turn. Not a huge issue. Our hand's got some ramp, missing some creatures perhaps. Alright, Fanatic could be nice. Although our opponent could also have some removal spells for creatures, so then ramping using my sorceries could make more sense. They do have a turn 2 Badger Mole. Yeah, I mean, Fanatic is still decent, or I can play it next turn, and for now Shared Roots. So then we can explore plus Fanatic. Opponent does have a Toski, so they get to draw here. Okay. Still like going for the Explore. And then Fanatic can maybe soak up one attacker. With great power, is gonna now redirect all the damage to Toski, which is indestructible, so that makes a lot of sense. So let's read this carefully. All damage dealt to you, so I can still block Toski. And then we do have the Archer's Charm, so that can remove the enchantment. Alright, so got some plays we can make. Boseiju technically would also be an answer, but I probably want it as a land. So step 1, play Beorn. And then Fanatic makes 4. I guess I could also attack with Mutavaults, and at the same time control an extra bear. Or I could play the Lightning Greaves to equip Beorn so I can attack right away, but leaving blockers back for Toski is also sensible. So, yeah, not hating the Mutavault line. So activate this. And then Charm. Exile your enchantment. Target the Fanatic, so we get to control 3 bears and draw 2. And now Flare of Cultivation still an option, but I don't think that's necessary. Would have to sack a green creature, so wouldn't have been able to sack the Mutavault. Opponent goes for She-Hulk. So whenever a creature they control is dealt damage, they can have She-Hulk deal that much damage to any target. So I guess we don't really want to block then. It's different when we're attacking with Trample, because then we only deal a little bit of damage to the blocker and the rest tramples over. So now we've got options. Is there anything I can Green Suns for? Primeval Titan comes to mind. Not playing Craterhoof Behemoth, otherwise that would also make sense. Not going to want to fight their stuff with a Thorn Mammoth, because that's also going to result in She-Hulk getting angry. So, yeah, a couple things to consider. Is there anything else I want to tutor for? Could just get a big bear. Try to trample our way past all the opponent's creatures. Let's go Provisioner. Name bear. Make a treasure. And then I still like the Green Suns for 6. And get Primeval Titan. Surek and Goreclaw could also be effective. Uroboroid would also be strong. So all considerations. And then get 2 fancy lanes. Nykthos and maybe a Fabled Passage if we ever get to a landfall card. Can play the Halfling. And then Flare of Cultivation triggers the Provisioner as well. In fact, I can even Lightning Greaves to give the Titan haste, which may be worthwhile. Alright, and then maybe I should flare now. Can maybe start making food. Go to combat. I guess I cannot target the Titan because it now has Shroud, but I can target the Provisioner. And then let's attack. Get some more lanes. And now I can go for some more valued lanes, like Basing Se and Argoth. Don't think we'll get to a library anytime soon. Let's go 1 each. Alright, I mean, still a good turn, but She-Hulk will get angry here. Beorn down. Back to the command zone. It's not going to be difficult to redeploy. Protect the Provisioner, and then I could still into the north, I suppose. So a lot of things happened. But as the dust settles, we have a lot of mana to work with. Couple mana sinks. Alright, opponent's got a Kogla to fight the Fanatic. And if that ever gets to attack, it can blow up our artifacts as well. I'll block Toski. And get to untap. Opponent does seem to have something in hand. Orim's Chant, so I cannot cast spells this turn. Yeah, that's annoying. Can I still Eternalize? Is that counting as casting a spell? It is not. So that still works. And then I can still activate my lands. So I'll make a treasure. Get back Fanatic. Could also give Fanatic haste to generate more mana, although that's not particularly helpful here. And then Basing Se could Earthbend onto a fetch land. Could also Earthbend onto the Mutavault and then still activate it to make it a 4/4 basically. That's kind of cool. And then we can, I guess, fetch and make a bear. So, despite our opponent silencing us this turn, we still got a pretty good turn out of it. Can move this onto the Fanatic. And no attacks. Although we are getting somewhat close to lethal. Because they can block the 4/4, and then I can pump Mutavault to essentially hit for 7. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option. And then I'm gonna lose the Lightning Greaves, but may as well move it here. Now the Sentry, giving us the Void. And Boromir Can also make their stuff indestructible. So Kogla staying back, because their opponent's scared now at 3 life. And Library the draw. So we can play Beorn, and then still have a bunch of ways to spend our mana. So I can make the Void into a bear, so it can attack past the sentry. So I'm not going to want to put Lightning Greaves on it. I can move the Greaves onto Beorn. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, they see that Void is going to end up hitting them. Can still Earthbend, maybe on a different land, and just go wide, attacking with everyone, while getting to draw 2 cards with Beorn as well. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Kroxa and Kunoros, so a Reanimator deck. Don't have any graveyard hate that I can think of, so we just need to be faster than whatever our opponent can cheat out, which is not an easy task. Ayula does give us some removal once we deploy more bears, and Ouroboros can also represent a lot of damage. So yeah, a reasonable hand. Would have maybe traded one of my 2-drops for an extra land. So for now I'll Rampant Growth, since the Weaver's more likely to get removed. And then now I can double spell Necklace into either Weaver or Cobra. Since I'm out of lands in hand, maybe Weaver makes more sense. But likely to get removed here, Fateful Absence. Would have been a fine answer to Beorn as well, so they might have additional removal in hand. Enduring Courage can give their stuff haste. Okay, so Beorn, without immediately drawing, is maybe not to play. Can't quite double spell with Ouroboros. Getting the library going would be nice. Maybe I should draw with a clue just to see what I get. Because if I hit a land, I can cast 2 more 2-drops. Thorn Mammoth instead. Alright, I guess Sylvan Library it is. And then next turn I can dig for land drops. Black Widow. Mill 3. So far, no creature in graveyard. And let's take action, finding a land Signet. So I definitely want to land. Do I also need the Signet and or Great Henge? So this turn I could go Cobra, play a land, trigger Landfall. Still wouldn't be able to play the Great Henge. So yeah, I guess we'll put these 2 back for now, or maybe just a Great Henge, keep the Signet. So I can go Signet into Ouroboros. Okay, so if they don't answer Ouroboros, it can massively pump my team next turn. After we turn it into a bear. I get to untap, opponent keeping up a bunch of removal, presumably. Okay, so we are at 13, so I do want to be mindful of my life total. But yeah, I'll keep land. Great Henge can gain life back. And give Ouroboros more counters. Play Beorn. Could also go Ayula into Beorn. Or Thorn Mammoth are all options. So if they're holding removal, I mean, they probably still have to deal with Ouroboros instead of Beorn, but could go either way, I suppose. Counter on... yeah, I'll still go Ouroboros. Cobra's big enough. And then we can go for Beorn. Maybe counter on Ayula. And then I could fight or go for the counter so I can still deploy the Great Henge right now. But fighting makes sense. If I try to fight Ayula with a Widow, then they could remove Beorn in response, so that doesn't really work out. So I'll try this. Okay. And then go to combat. First resolve Beorn, and then the Ouroboros. Alright, they're letting it all happen. So my team is enormous. I get to attack. And then still play a 2-mana Henge after all. Opponent has an Entomb. Alright, so we could be dead anyways here to a hasty Kroxa and Kunoros. Can get back a creature from the graveyard. So anything with, I guess, 11 power, since we're going to gain 2. Opponent goes for Arden. That might still be beatable. Counter on... Don't think it matters too much. Get a bunch more triggers. Everything's huge. And pass a turn. Ooh, vanquish the Horde, so they did have a sweeper, which explains why they were playing it so passive. But glad we got the Great Henge in play at least. Look at some more cards. And then... whatever creature I play will still draw with the Great Henge. Can start with a Provisioner. Play the first tier. Might want some food actually, since dying to their hasty creatures is now a concern. Undraw the Caryatids. I guess I do have a Season of Gathering, which could destroy all enchantments. So then I lose Sylvan Library, they lose the Enduring Courage. That actually makes a big difference. And then they can still use Kroxa to get back Arden, I suppose. Because yeah, I guess Kroxa would trigger twice. So that does complicate matters a little bit. So yeah, Season of Gathering is certainly an option. Don't have any haste myself. So let's Season. Destroy enchantments, and then draw. Grow the Provisioner so I get to draw a bit more. Find on a natural growth, explore. Okay, so I can explore, play a lands, make a treasure. And then still sack my food. Alright, that seems good enough for now. Discard to hand size. And now Dancing from Dark to Dawn could also do some work. A Ruinous Ultimatum is going to blow all my stuff up. So I'll sack my food on the way out. I do still have a lot of lands at least. But yeah, not gonna lie, that still hurt. So now with 10 mana, and Beorn is 7. Yeah, I think we just go Dancing and make a bunch of bears. So I can cultivate, play a fetch. And then still play the Caryatids. And maybe a natural growth can do some damage next turn once we pump up our bears with Beorn. But there's Kroxa and Kunoros, getting Arden back, presumably. Which in turn can reanimate something else, even from my graveyard. Goes for Black Widow. And they mill the Liege, which is pretty good too. Black Widow attacks. So that would hit for 5, gaining 5. Opponent goes up to 16. We lose another 2 at least. They could mill more creatures. And then next turn, with 12 mana, potentially 14 mana, I could go Natural Growth plus Beorn. Now, not all my bears trample, so then possible that Thorn Mammoth is actually still better. Yeah, I think we play a more controlling game here. Okay, so play a land, make a bear. Play Beorn. And then I can still Thorn Mammoth, so I could also Thorn Mammoth into Beorn to deal with both of the opponent's creatures, even though I lose the Mammoth as well. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then grow Bear. Just enough mana thanks to the Caryatid. I guess I can add 5 counters to the Mammoth, so then it does still survive the fight with Kroxa. So that actually works out perfectly. Suppose I could have also put the counters on one of the bears that gets to attack here, but I don't think we would have had lethal, because they also gain life in the fight. Larger bear to give a trample. Hit you for 15. So Kroxa and Kunoros is back once again. Can get back Arden a second time. And that could still get Liege. Or Uroboroid is also pretty good here. Although it's not going to trigger since they're already past the beginning of combat. And our opponent scoops it up. So yeah, very grindy game. Getting my board swept by Vanquish the Horde and Aruna's Ultimatum. But still coming out on top. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Maralen, so a Sultai, Elf and Fairy deck. Our hand has potential, just needs to find maybe one more land or ramp card to bridge the gap to cast our 5-drops. And then once we get Beorn in play, we can cheaply deploy the Great Henge. Exploration's a little awkward here when we do not have a lot of extra lands to go with it. But sure, I guess we'll still play it. And then, what are we hoping for? Something like a Cultivate would be great. Alright, Flare of Cultivation is pretty much the same. Let's see, are you forced to put a land on the battlefield? Yes. Otherwise I could have kept both in hand, and then they would let me play the Rampant Growth that turn as well. Okay, opponent in the meantime with Nissa and Priest of Titania, which tracks every elf on the battlefield, including the ones I control. So our opponent's got a lot of mana lined up for next turn, so it's not going to be easy. This turn feels like going for Beorn is still correct, but yeah, now we're not guaranteeing the mana for Primeval Titan. We're pretty far from drawing 2, unless we maybe play Dancing alongside a fetch land. Opponent with Titania's Command in exile. And the Spirits, they get to play for free, since they control enough elves. So yeah, opponent with an amazing start as well. Alright, found the land. So, and now what? We can go dancing, make one bear. Feels like getting the Great Henge in place may be more beneficial, or I can just cast a Primeval Titan, since I cannot quite do both. And then with the Titan we can get more lanes, and at least we'll be able to turn the Titan into a bear. And here I like getting maybe just 2 fetch lanes. Nykthos is also a consideration. Yeah, maybe go Nykthos plus a fetch to make more bear tokens, and Fabled Passage is painless. And then target the Titan. No attacks, I don't think. Because our opponent's probably happy to double block, since they can easily recast their commander. So I'll wait. Ooh, Reflections to copy their elves. They have a Pretender left, so now they get 2. And there's also a chance that Maralen hits a couple elves for my deck. Ooh, they found a Blizzard Brawl. They don't have a creature quite large enough to fight. Skyclave Relic. Alright, at least their hand is empty. And there's nothing too scary that they can cast. Take 4 in the air. Get to untap. Alright, so Great Henge is free to deploy, so we'll start there. Can go dancing. And then maybe wait on tapping Nykthos, if that works out. Yes. So we up our devotion, and then now we can run out our land. And a Thorn Mammoth is happening. Probably could have actually waited to fetch, because with Thorn Mammoth I will be able to fight several times. What I can, I guess, still do is Thorn Mammoth into Rampant Growth, and then the extra bear is still going to allow me to fight. And in fact, I can also use Primeval Titan to make more bears and fight. So we'll start with the Spirit, since that way the Thorn Mammoth doesn't take any damage. Jumping Changeling, I guess, now just destroys the Reflection, and put more counters on maybe the Thorn Mammoth, actually. And yeah, this is just way too much for the opponent to overcome. Changeling entering lets us fight once again. Then the Titan and Beorn get to attack after having drawn 2 cards. And then those 2 lands make 2 more bears, which in turn let me once again fight with the Thorn Mammoth. So we can very quickly decimate the opponent's board, deal with Maralen, Priest, and Nissa, and then we'll still have our Mammoth in play. So there's no way they recover from that. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Baron, mono black. So yeah, we've got a functional hand, but we can expect some removal from our opponent as well. And especially board wipes are going to be painful to recover from. Start with the Lenor Elves, since we may need the extra green compared to the Halfling. Don't think the extra toughness really matters here. Alright, so can already go for a Provisioner. Either way, next turn Goreclaw. Or with a Treasure, we could go for our Commander already. Getting Goreclaw in play is still tempting. That way also don't have to sacrifice a treasure. And then next turn it's going to be trivial to deploy our commander. Opponent runs out the Baron. They haven't discarded anything yet, but of course they can use a Connive to set up their graveyard. So the fact that they run out their commander here means that they probably don't have a sweeper lined up. The gigantic big bear is also an option, actually. And that would hit pretty hard, since we also get trample on it. So yeah, maybe gigantic big bear gets the nod. And I don't mind trading the Provisioner So Bear beatdown, even without Beorn. Opponent falls to 3. And next turn we get to give our bears +2/+2. Ooh, Mask of Gristlebrand. Don't know if that's going to be enough. Opponent even discarding Gristlebrand. That's very flavorful. And our opponent scoops it up. Alright, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Raph and Mikey, Troublemakers. So we could be in a bit of trouble here, since they're gonna get their commander in play and probably kill us in 1 or 2 attacks. My hand isn't bad. Turn 1 elves, turn 2 core. Yeah, I'll see where this ends up. Our deck is not gonna have much in the way of disruption for the opponent's plan, so there's no real sense in mulliganing when we have a pretty decent start. But yeah, this is just a bad matchup, I think. To beat Raph and Mikey, you need counter spells or instant speed removal that can deal with a 7/7. So that being said, Ayula does give us a way to maybe put additional +1 counters on Beorn, so we can maybe have a large enough blocker for Raph and Mikey, which is something. So yeah, this turn, still probably go for the core, since it keeps on ramping. And then next turn I could play Beorn, or we can go for Ayula plus Lightning Greaves. Just gotta hope they don't have a particularly fast start themselves. But yeah, can expect them to ramp on turn 2. Maybe double ramp on turn 3. Okay, Provisioner, does that change anything? Can I play Provisioner, play a land, make a treasure, have 3 mana left, so it's not quite enough for Ayula plus Lightning Greaves. So then I might just be better off playing Beorn now. Although then I'll never get to an 8/8, which is maybe still preferable. So then I could just go Ayula plus Lightning Greaves. And attack for 3. So then the plan might be to leave an 8/8 on defense. Opponent with a Cursed Mirror. And a Farseek. So next turn they can Raph and Mikey. Yeah, I think I can stick to the plan. So not gonna play Provisioner. Play Beorn. Not gonna animate Mutavault since I'm not gonna be able to attack with it. Enters with 2 counters. And then Llanowar Elves will turn into a bear as well here. And I can move the Lightning Greaves onto Beorn. I mean, if I attack, I am attacking for 15 myself. So then my opponent potentially still just dies on the following turn. If I leave Beorn back and my opponent hits, let's say, Terror of Mount Velus to give their creatures double strike, then I would only take 24. And I would not have a profitable block on Raph and Mikey anyway. And yeah, opponent actually scoops it up. Just wanted to reason my way through it here. But yeah, a hasty attack here seemed pretty decent. And then if they don't hit something amazing off Raph and Mikey, I'm not even sure what, then we can probably just kill them on the way back. So I guess outracing Raph and Mikey was not on my radar, but with the Lightning Greaves, certainly possible. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Nick Fury, a 5-color hero deck, perhaps. Our hand has potential. I'll take an extra land or another ramp card off the top. And start with the Llanowar Elves, since I may need the extra green, don't expect any counter spells. Alright, Mox Amber, a target for the Chomping Changeling, and actually drew Archdruid's Charm. So might want to go for Charm over playing the Halfling, and then the Charm can get one of my better lanes. Can think about it in the opponent's turn. So Library of Alexandria is not online yet. Could go for Castle Garenbrig or Nykthos, which can maybe later make additional mana for us. Yeah, either one of those probably makes the most sense. Opponent goes for Nick Fury. So, yeah, that enables the Mox Amber to make a white. And let's get a Nykthos, I think. So this turn I could already go for Ouroboros, or now Necklace into Halfling is also quite tempting. And then I might be able to grow Ouroboros with a Necklace to pump the team even more. Taking out Mox with Chomping Changelings also consideration, but I want to keep developing my own mana. And I'll offer the trade. So Nykthos up to 3 Devotion, and now Daredevil, the follow-up. Alright, just a hit for 3. So now we've got options. Chomping Changeling for the Mox is still up there. Can deploy Beorn, even if I don't have another bear on the battlefield to immediately draw to. Is there a way I can increase my devotion and then still activate Nykthos? I can, if I go for Selvala first. So that's quite appealing. And then this makes 5 mana. So I can still play Beorn or Ouroboros. Ouroboros first does make some amount of sense, so then next turn if I play Beorn, I get to immediately pump the team even more. Although I guess the reverse is also true. And then I get to drop Selvala, maybe still hit a land drop. And we'll make something into a bear. Let's make it Selvala herself. So now 7 Devotion for Nykthos. And then Ouroboros can first be made into a bear, and then pump the team with its ability. Opponent with a Cosmic Cube, another great target for Chomping Changeling. So maybe my patience has paid off. Will Daredevil find something useful? Finds Black Panther. And now Black Widow off Cosmic Cube. So 5/5. Can still just block it here. Alright, options aplenty. But yeah, I guess it's fine to activate Selvala. Just make as much green as possible. Play Ouroboros. And then playing creatures afterwards will put additional counters on it with a Necklace. So probably fine to tap Nykthos now. Or I can first tap the Halfling. Play the Changeling. Counter on Ouroboros. I guess the cube does have a Ward 2, which I could still pay for. And then how about Summon Bahamut, just because? Destroy Black Widow, and our opponent's not going to play it out, understandably. But we would get a Beorn trigger, make Ouroboros into a... I guess first get a counter from Necklace, or no, it's only green spells. So Ouroboros goes up to 4 power by becoming a bear, and then we get to put 4+1 counters on the entire team. So yeah, opponent's pretty far behind. If we wanted to play it optimally, probably don't go for Summon Bahamut in case our opponent is playing a board wipe, and then we can just Rishkar's Expertise and just draw a ton of extra cards. So if our opponent does have a board wipe, it's going to be pretty easy for us to recover. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing the Earth King. So our opponent's also making a bear. Just a 4/4 token. Our hand is almost good enough. If we had some 2 or 3 mana cards to bridge the gap, I would be more into it. On the draw with only an Elvish Mystic as acceleration, we might fall behind. But we do get a few draw steps to maybe find something useful. So it's a close call. I guess I'll try it. Thorn Mammoth could be effective once we get it down as a way to fight opposing creatures. And our opponent's not off to a blazing start. Finds a gigantic big bear. It's not exactly the 2 or 3 drop I was hoping for. They probably have a 2 mana accelerant, the heirloom. Alright, halfling is good enough. I think I'll save the fetch since we have plenty of lands to make sure it enters untapped. And we do have some landfall synergies. So then next turn I can already cast my commander. Opponent has Nissa, no lands, and Nissa's Pilgrimage, the draw. But yeah, let's get this party started. Now halfling is also a bear, getting +2/+2, and next turn we'll easily get to 3 bears to draw 2 cards as well. Enduring Vitality is next. Nissa can tap for mana. So they kept a bit of a sketchy hand with only 2 lanes and an heirloom. They were hoping to draw a land in the meantime. Right, they do have a tail swipe to fight elves. Or Elvish Mystic. Cultivate the draw. So what is next? I guess we cannot play another creature here. So then I guess we go cultivating instead of playing the Guardian Project. And just attack for 9. And then next turn I guess we can tap the halfling to cast the bear or the mammoth most likely. Traveling Chocobo could be very scary with Nissa, especially with a fetch land. So now Nissa gets to generate 4 mana total. And they found a Tireless Provisioner, which they can play before sacking the fetch. So now the opponent's deck is firing on all cylinders. And the Mammoth has a lot of catching up to do. So our opponent can still cast the Earth King, at the very least. It's going to be the Practicum, putting 2/+1 counters on their creatures each turn. Yeah, that's also quite good. Found a Provisioner. Does that change anything? Still feels like I need to deploy the Thorn Mammoth. If I play Provisioner plus a fetch, it doesn't quite break even yet. So yeah, let's fight maybe the Chocobo first, since it enhances both Nissa and the Provisioner. Or we can just take out one of the landfall creatures and then next turn the other one and hope that the Chocobo doesn't matter. Although next turn they'll also get 2/+1 counters on the team once again. So yeah, it's not going to be easy. Probably makes sense to fight one of the untapped creatures. And yeah, let's go with the Chocobo. Also helps them play lands off the top, since we know they're struggling with that. Hit for 6. Next turn we can play the Big Bear and hope that we have enough trample to maybe cross the finish line, especially if they end up tapping some of their creatures. Utopia Sprawl is free. And the Earth King. Anything else? Can still tap their creatures with a Vitality for a Ride the Shoe Puff. Earth King triggers getting a land. And both Nissa and Provisioner trigger. Still going for treasure. And I will not be blocking. And get to untap. Alright, so opponent's at 9. So this turn... Let's see. Can play the Big Bear and then just have Thorn Mammoth fight the 4/4. Big Bear also gets +2/+2 and trample. And then an all-out attack should leave them dead. Yeah, that seems good enough to me. Possible we can make some fancy plays with Medallion into Provisioner, but then I might get in trouble if our opponent does have some interaction up here. Because then the Halfling would not be able to attack. Alright, let's smash. Because this game was starting to slip away otherwise. Opponent double blocks. But yeah, they're still taking lethal. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Anina, the X-costed deck. This hand seems a little bit too slow, need a 1 or 2 mana accelerant. And a Lotus Cobra might do the trick, especially if S.H.I.E.L.D finds a fetch land at some point. We have 1 bear in hand. And a variable solutions puts a land in play. Blizzard Brawl, a reason to deploy our snow-covered lands. Could give us an answer to Anina. Opponent plays a Solemn first. Because otherwise I could have played a land, made a green, maybe played Scavenger to fight Anina. And now I don't mind the S.H.I.E.L.D Explorer. Can still play an extra land out. And no real incentive to fight the Solemn or use Boseiju, so I'll pass a turn. Milds our enchantment as opposed to a land, so that one would have been great with S.H.I.E.L.D if we can get a fetch land involved. Opponent just keeps on ramping, so they're not interested in playing Anina. Alright, there's my fetch land. So that'll make a ton of mana with a Lotus Cobra as well. So let's see here. I can play the Scavenger alongside Beorn. And then we'll get to draw a card right away, since we'll control 3 bears if I target either S.H.I.E.L.D or Cobra. And then I think we'll make it the S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, and then do I attack. Yeah, the S.H.I.E.L.D can get in there. And now second main I can still play the Medallion if I'd like. So Cobra and S.H.I.E.L.D putting in a ton of work. Just enough bears to draw 2 cards right away. You don't need a ton in this deck, since there's not a ton of amazing constructed playable bears out there. But just having a few couple changelings as well can make your Beorn a lot more impactful the turn you play it. Scrap bot to exile my graveyard, alright, so punished for not keeping the fetch land available. We also had the Fanatic, which we could have eternalized, but I'm sure we'll manage. Can still activate the Bind to Life for 5, milling 7, and that's also likely to find more lanes. So yeah, we can start there. And get back a Kogla. Seems fine. Fight Anina. And our opponent's gonna explode. Could still play lands out of the graveyard with I Still Explorer. And then, yeah, we still have 2 additional removal spells in hand. So we're not gonna run out of answers anytime soon while dealing more damage and drawing extra cards. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Dina Soul Steeper, so a black-green, usually life gain, infinite combo deck. And yeah, we don't have a ton of ways to disrupt it necessarily, but yeah, this hand's pretty fast if we can get things online, especially with the third land. We already have a couple bears, so it's going to be easier to draw to. And the best way to fight an infinite life gain combo deck, if you don't have much interaction, is just to be faster. Alright, Ayula, I guess, does give us some removal. Can have our bears fight opposing creatures. So, let's see here. This turn I could still go for Nissa. Could also first year and then rampant growth. But if Nissa survives, that probably has the highest upside. Although I usually try to wait until I can enable landfall on the very same turn. But, yeah. That way with the first year we can maybe enable Nissa twice. Or immediately go for our commander. Opponent takes out the Mystic, since -2 is not enough for Nissa. And Necklace the draw. So I think we stick to the plan here. Play a land, make a green, play the first year. I can rampant growth and then still play a 2-drop like the Sanctum Weaver. While also getting an elf from Nissa. And Priest of Titania has a little bit more upside, since we already have an elf on the battlefield. So then the priest will tap for at least 2. Opponent's gonna answer the priest. So then I'm hoping to draw lands, which we did not. So what are my options? I can play the Necklace into Sanctum Weaver, or Necklace into Ayula. Necklace into Ayula means I can next turn fight Dina when Beorn enters. Although if they somehow have artifact removal, I might be a mana short. But yeah, I think this has the highest upside. And then counter on maybe the first year. Next turn would get +2/+2 once we deploy our commander. Bastion of Remembrance. Can drain us when their creatures die. Rampant Growth the draw. Alright, let's go for Beorn. And then counter on... Can go for Ayula. And have these two fight. I'll target Nissa just to have more bears, even though giving Ayula trample would also make sense. Opponent falls to 10. They need some sort of board wipe. Argoth enters untapped since we control a legendary, so then now, kind of like the Rampant Growth, if they do have a board wipe, at least we'll have more lands on the battlefields. And then next turn I can easily play a 2-mana Great Henge. Found a Llanowar Elves, which I could play, but it feels like we're far enough ahead on board that it's not necessary. Alright, sweet, and that'll do it. So yeah, we got to see this Beorn Brawl deck in action, and Beorn is the perfect commander for a green deck. It provides card advantage, it bumps up your team, gives stuff trample, and there's even synergy with a creature type that's maybe a bit underappreciated in green, so it's nice to see bears getting a bit of recognition. So yeah, can't say enough good things about the deck. Now, we did not get to face Hey Bye in today's video, so that's the first time in a long time that we haven't faced a 5-color Shrine deck. I guess the matchmaker didn't want to see Panda Bear on bear action. But yeah, for now, if you want to play a powerful green commander, Beorn is certainly up there, even if it doesn't quite dethrone Rofellos as probably the most powerful mono-green commander, but at least it seems a little bit better in the more casual queue. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.